What is going on YouTube? This is LA Prepper here, and today we're going to talk about how to choose a good bug out bicycle. You might be wondering why my bicycle is upside down, and that will become apparent by about number 5. Okay, so first of all, if you don't have a bicycle, I would highly recommend getting one, not just for the prepping purposes of maybe bugging out on a bicycle, but for conditioning, for scouting, for emotional health. There's just a lot of great reasons to get exercise, and I don't know about you, but I'm not the biggest fan of spending time in the gym. So one thing I do to help reduce my costs as far as driving, keep myself entertained, is I just go for bike rides. I love it. I've been riding a bike ever since I was a kid, and I highly recommend it. So, without further ado, let's get into the buying guide. Number 1, used versus new. Well, is a new bike worth it? That's a tough call. You can find a lot of used bikes in pretty decent condition. This bike, brand new, probably cost about $300. I picked it up used for $40. And the only thing I've bought for it is... Which one's a new rim? I think I have a new... Do I have a new rim? I don't even have a new rim. Nope. I have one new tire on the back, a bunch of tubes that I built, and original rims on the front and the back. So that is how much I've spent on this bike. I'm going to leave it up to you. If you're on a budget, I would highly recommend going used. If you can find a great bike that's brand new at a good price and there's some kind of warranty on it, and you just don't want to deal with buying an old bike, go for it. Costs you anywhere from $200-300 to $400-500. Bicycles get ridiculously expensive, so maybe get a used one, see if you're into it, and if not, you can sell it. It won't depreciate that much, no big deal. But this guide, I guess, is going to be mostly about buying a used bike, what kind of things you want to watch out for, and how to kind of miss major pitfalls of bikes that might be in different types of condition. So number 1 is sizing. Let's go ahead and get this pedal back up to here. I worked at a bike shop. We're going to go, I can't even go sideways, but I worked at a bike shop for a number of weeks, that number being 2, because they were paying me $6.50 an hour and I sold like 20 bikes. I was making them a lot of money. And I knew I was worth, even back then, I knew I was worth more than $6.50 an hour, which I think is the lowest hourly rate. No, it's the second lowest hourly rate I've ever made in my entire life. But anyways, the way to tell if a bike's a good size for you is, generally if you're taller, you obviously want to get a bigger frame. If you're smaller, get a shorter frame. But when you're sitting on the seat, you want your leg, when it's touching the pedal, to be basically fully extended, maybe just a little bit of a bend, but you don't want this to be fully extended. You don't want your leg to be like bent at all. You want your leg to be basically completely straight. And if you can't lower the seat, if the bike is large to make it like that, or if you can't raise the seat high enough, this seat has a ridiculous seat post that's like this tall. I don't even know why it's that long, but at any rate, that is the basics of how you size your bike. How the handlebar fits into that is probably going to kind of default to how your legs fit on the bike. So start with this. Better to buy a bike that fits you with the seat further down than with the seat further up. If you have to move the seat up, like 10 inches for the bike to fit, chances are the rest of the frame is going to feel a little bit small. Also, if you have to move the seat all the way down to make it fit and you're done growing, the rest of the bike might feel a little bit big. Oh, we got some macaroni going on here, so give me a quick little break. Doing some macaroni for dinner, macaroni and tuna. Now, the goal is to finish this video before my macaroni's done. I'm on the clock. All right. So that's sizing. Number 3, condition. Generally, I would not buy a bike that's beat up and rusted and old because even though rust isn't the biggest deal in and of itself, a little bit of rust on the outside can be indicative of rust on the inside. So, if the chain's a little bit rusty or you see a little bit of rust, maybe not a big deal. But if you see a lot of rust anywhere, all over the bike, and or if you're buying a bicycle that was living near the ocean, yeah, don't buy bikes that people own near the ocean. They get all that salt mist from the air. It just kills bikes. If you don't believe me, go to the beach and look at bicycles. And if you're not near the beach, I'm sorry. I'm going to go more into condition, so I'm going to leave that for now. Original maintenance. So this is something you want to look at how well the bike was maintained. Are the brakes set up? Do they look like they've been wearing evenly? Let me give you a quick example of spoke tightness, right? Ready? You want them to kind of make the right tinging noise. If they don't make a tinging noise, then they're probably loose. And you want to know how I check how spokes are loose? Kind of give them a little squeeze like that. Oh, see, like this one, that one's just a little bit loose, so I should probably tighten that one. But as far as other types of maintenance, I'm going to get into the derailleur, but if the derailleur is not set well, that kind of tells you it hasn't been maintained well. If the tires are really bald, if the spokes are loose, if you have tape on the handlebars like I do, things like that tell you to kind of watch out, because if it has been maintained well, it's going to be a better buy than if it has not been maintained well. The rim condition. This is why I have it upside down right now. So what you're going to do to figure out if your rim is straight, you're going to put the bike upside down. All you got to do is spin the wheel and look at the gap between the rim and the brake. All right, ready? Let's see if I can get the autofocus here. God, it's really, there we go. So you notice how that's a very uniform distance all the way around. I'll do it again. Extremely uniform distance. You're not seeing the rim come in and out like that. Now, the back one has had a little bit more interesting life, so let's look at that one. And it's a little bit harder to get the angle. Let me see if I can get it from this side. But see how there's just a little bit more movement in and out? That's not too bad, but in general, you want that to be at a minimum. You don't want to see, got to stir my macaroni real quick. You don't want to see a lot of play. You don't want to see that wobbling back and forth a lot. Another thing you can do real quick, just kind of pull and push on the rim and just make sure that it doesn't feel loose, which means that the bearing is either shot, ball bearings are shot or a little bit loose. Like my front one, well, it's actually not too bad. I thought it was doing worse, but this is just some gunk from when the air releases. It kind of goops up that area. But do a quick check. Make sure that if you try to wiggle this back and forth, it doesn't wiggle too much. Brakes. Want to make sure that the brakes are not only in good condition, but that they're evenly aligned. You don't want to see them like all crooked like that or all crooked like that. You don't really want a lot of wear on the front, but not on the back, vice versa. You want to make sure that they're well aligned to the braking surface on the rim. Now, if they're not aligned right, you can kind of take care of that. And for what it's worth, these are not supposed to be parallel. They're actually supposed to be, this end is supposed to be towed in just a little bit so that when it breaks, it kind of sucks the back in. At least that is what has been explained to me. So check the brakes, check to see that you don't have a lot of play. If there's too much play on the handle, you can do a little bit of adjusting, but if this thing is adjusted all the way out, it means that you're gonna have to reset the cable, adjust that down, reset like these cables and stuff. And by the way, make sure you have a good splitter on here. You'll notice that on the front of mine, I have moved to a Bic pen for my splitter because the other one had a little bit of a rough life. Bearings. All right, let's flip this bad boy over real quick. This was something I sort of noticed on my bike, but I didn't really do much about it because it was 40 bucks. Oh, what's going on? Why is everything all dark right now? Okay, so you can't really tell, but my front Yeah, you can't really tell, but my front steering bearing is actually loose, and that's not good. It's kind of a pain in the ass to deal with this stuff, and I'm not a bike guy, and I haven't taken it to a bike guy, so I haven't really done anything with it, but just try to make sure that the bearings that you're working with are in good condition. Did I get something on the lens? What's going on here? Anyways, so you're gonna want to make sure that mine kind of has like looseness like this, and you can tell when you're riding it. So that's another thing to keep an eye out for. The seat, seats aren't that expensive, but just make sure that it's in good condition, that it's comfortable, that it's not torn and stuff, because you're gonna want a decent seat. My seat has some little like pseudo crappy shock absorbers in the back. It's actually not too bad. Suspension. My suspension is freaking shot. These are some cheap Rock Shocks. They were kind of one of the earlier makers of shocks. I remember when bikes first started coming out with shocks, they'd have Rock Shocks on them, but these are just kind of crappy. The seals are jacked up. They really don't work well, and with the bearing being messed up, they really don't work well. But I got the bike for $40, and you want to buy a brand new bike with front suspension, it's going to be like $350, $400. So make sure that the suspension works. To check the front suspension, you can simply, got to get my bicycle brakes on. You can just hold the front brake and push kind of hard down forward. And if you don't get a little bit of cushion, then the suspension might be a little rotted. You can also just if you have a full suspension bike, just take it over a curb kind of easily, and that's not really a big deal for a full suspension bike, and you should be able to get kind of a good sense. Take it over a couple bumps, take it over a speed bump, and if you're not getting some good flex, you can even kind of sit on the bike and kind of bounce on it. Then your suspension might be old. Now you can replace the front forks. I could replace the front forks and have a much better bike, but I kind of want a newer bike at some point in my life, so there's that. Last but not least, accessories. Accessories don't cost a lot, but they are convenient. This is a drink holder that broke because I kept I kept putting water bottles in that were too small, so I kept having to fold the thing in, and then it just eventually cracked right there. But hopefully your bike will have a couple of mounts for drink holders. I have one here and one here. This one I use to mount a pump that I don't have on it right now because I usually take short trips. Another thing you want to look for is preferably your bike's going to have some sort of tapped hole, threaded hole right here to help with a rack. If you want to do some kind of rack, you can do a rack that's just from the seat post, but they're not quite as strong, and they have, according to people I've talked to, they have a tendency to kind of do weird stuff like that. So if you want to get a rack, get the kind with supporting arms. That's kind of the basics. Just take a general overall look at the bike. Try to make sure it's in kind of better condition. Just put a little bit of time and energy into doing an inspection. Look at some comps. Get an idea of what a good price for a bike is. I think they had this listed for $60, and I offered $40, and they took it. I think I even offered $40 via email, so I didn't even have to negotiate when I got there. One of my favorite bartering tricks, just to avoid. On smaller purchases, I don't really like to dick around with $5 here and there, so I just try to agree on a price, and then I know how much cash to bring with me and, change and such when I go. So there you have it. There's kind of a quick and dirty guide to choosing a bicycle. I have ridden the crap out of this thing. I ride it to school. I've ridden it all over town. I love it. I think it's a great form of transportation. I would highly, highly recommend some sort of lights. These are just super cheap little $10 Schwinn lights. This one is really bright. This one's so bright, if there's a sign like 50 feet, 100 feet down the street, it'll make the sign blink. So it's actually a lot brighter than it looks. And I leave that one on blinking, and I also leave this one on blinking. It's got a couple settings. It's got on, it's got blink like that, and it's got like kind of funny blink. I don't know. But riding a bicycle can be dangerous. People are not always super careful about other riders, which can be kind of annoying. You're going to get squeezed between cars. You're not really going to have a lane. It can be a little bit annoying. I ride on the sidewalk, which is technically illegal in the city of Alhambra, but I don't really care because I would rather get a ticket for riding on the sidewalk than get crushed by a car in a hit and run going 50 miles an hour while they were texting because they're late for work or whatever. So that's kind of my philosophy on riding on the sidewalk. And I've never got stopped once in my life for riding on the sidewalk. So, but don't be blowing stop signs and blowing red lights and riding all over the place like a crazy maniac. When you're on the road, you're supposed to follow the motor vehicle code as a bicycle. So don't be that cyclist that everyone hates. Like, oh, cyclists are the worst. They're always doing this and that. Don't be that guy. Don't be that guy or girl or non-binary gender. But anyways, that's a quick and dirty guide. Love to see your bug out bicycle if you have one, or your favorite form of non-motorized transportation. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you next time.